My TBR is extremely ambitious. Every time the seasons change, I grieve a little. I'm afraid that I didn't savor every moment enough before we slip into a new junction of nature. I feel the bittersweet melancholia that time changed before I was ready. The only way that I have found to combat this small and private sorrow is to manufacture anticipation. Romanticizing the coming season helps me to relish it. Creating whimsy and joy is the antidote for dreading the inevitable, tangible, disquieting passage of time. And here are the ways that I am sentimentalizing the changing season right now. First is my seasonal bucket list. This is a curated list of attainable, cozy ways to cherish the moment we're in. Think of this like mini resolutions, but for happiness. I'm not nearly as sad about how early it gets dark if I'm looking at Christmas lights, laughing and crafting with my best friends, or lighting fir-scented candles. I can't feel cold if I'm baking cookies or drinking hot cocoa or soaking in a bubble bath. I don't know about you, but I've never been sad while doing a craft. The trick is to set myself up for success. These are things that are simple, realistic, achievable, and therefore satisfying to cross off the list. But rather than generating more stuff to do, these are things that I would do anyway. A mini dopamine menu full of magical moments of excitement. These are things like my 2026 planner reset, a Christmassy craft, the tradition of decorating, making a winter playlist, going and looking at Christmas lights, drinking hot cocoa, visiting a Christmas tree farm, eating peppermint ice cream, baking cinnamon rolls, making a Christmas movie watch list, or cultivating a TBR. I've also started this reading bingo card. Can you tell that I love to compile a list? The key here for me is to thread the needle between books that I am excited to read that will ignite joy for me about the season that I'm inside of, and a category that covers the books that I wanted to read anyway. For example, books that I'm going to read for book clubs, or books that I've had on my physical TBR for far too long and I need to read them. Even though this is for fun and completely extracurricular, absolutely optional, I am a bit of a completionist, so I need to have some low-hanging fruit that makes it relatively easy to finish. This is the perfect time to include books from my TBR that I already plan to read anyway. So I thought in this video I would walk through my massive, very overambitious TBR, my reading bingo card, and you'll see that this TBR that is as tall as me is overly ambitious because I want to have multiple options for each section of that bingo card. That way, if things on this TBR are unread, I still can finish my bingo card. Let's get into this very massive list. Let's just go ahead and start with the romance category. First up, for cowboy romance, I'm gonna read Cowboy, It's Cold Outside. My understanding is that this is number 12 in this like cowboy romance setting from this author. She's very prolific in the cowboy romance space. And this is a Christmas edition, and I think this cover is stunning. It's absolutely beautiful, and that's a good enough reason. If the atmosphere and the setting is as good, like half as good as this cover, I'm thrilled. I know that this is an off-limits romance and that the reviews are somewhat middling, and I am purely here for the vibes and this stunning cover. What I do know is that Four Corners is about to have the hottest romance that this town has ever seen. I'm sorry. Her name is Sheena, his name is Denver, like, I know exactly what I'm getting into, and I'm thrilled, and I'm excited, and I will be getting to this very soon. The next spot on my bingo card is paranormal romance, and I have the perfect one in mind. I have a few in mind, but the one that I'm the most excited for is Good Spirits by B.K. Borison. What I know is that he's the ghost of Christmas past, and she is a quirky little people pleaser who is running an antique shop, and he is going to hunt her until she mends her ways. But the thing is that she's not exactly Scrooge. She is full of Christmas cheer and is a kind person, so why is he hunting her? They're going to explore that together, aren't they? I think this is the very next book on my TBR that I am going to start today. The very first sentence of this book starts on the first day of December, and I think that I have to pick this up on December 1st. Another paranormal romance on my list is The Nightmare Before Christmas. I believe this is the Prince of Halloween, and he's like the Prince of Christmas, and they have this like fantasy world in which their courts rule different holidays, I think, and then they're gonna kiss. That's all I know. It seems really festive and fun. I have never seen The Nightmare Before Christmas, but I've been told that it is in no way necessary to understand or enjoy this. The only thing they have in common is that it's Christmas and Halloween together. So yeah, I'm pumped. The next one on my list for this is Pink Miss, which is just a book with a pink cover. And for that, I think I'm going to read A Mannequin for Christmas. I have been told that this is relatively similar to that Netflix movie that came out last year, Hot Frosty. I am quite positive that the premise of this is that our main character is going to wake up, make a Christmas wish, and that will be for the perfect man, and that will come in the form of a recently animated mannequin. I have questions and concerns about the ethics of falling in love with something that has that young of a consciousness, but I don't think we're meant to question it. I think we're meant to have fun. So, Merry Pink Miss. Let's quickly run through the rest of the other Christmas romances that are on my TBR radar. The first of which is All I Want Is You. This one may look a little funny, and that is because one of my closest friends in the entire universe turned this into an advent calendar for me, so I am meant to read a few pages every day for 25 days, beginning on December 1st. And that's delightful and so fun, and this was such a fun surprise, and I can't wait to do this. This is two rival romance authors, who are trapped together, forced proximity, during a snowstorm, and that sounds delightful. The next one I've got is Make Me a Mixtape, and this is in the music industry, and I want to say it follows like all the holidays up to New Year, like from Halloween to the new year. So it feels like the perfect time to pick this up. I think that it's like band frontrunner and fan dynamic, and that sounds pretty fun. I've also got A Jingle Bell Mingle, and I've never read any books by this duo before, and I figured it was high time too. I've heard that he is like a former washed up boy band heartthrob, and she is like an adult filmmaker, if you know what I mean. I've also got The Merriest Misters, and I already have another book by this author higher up on this list that I want to get to, but I've had this sitting on my bookshelf since last Christmas. I think this is kind of like the Santa Claus, so this would also work to check my paranormal romance box. I believe this follows a newer couple. I think they're like a year into their marriage. They're feeling the fractures of marriage in the real life, and they wake up one day and it's like the Santa Claus. They're like on the North Pole and have to be Santa together, and I'm assuming that they have to work together to bring the magic of Christmas to the world and back into each other's lives. I don't know, but it sounds delightful. And I found Written in the Stars. This is a sapphic retelling of Pride and Prejudice, and this doesn't seem to be explicitly marketed as a holiday romance, but it does seem like it probably takes place over the holidays, so I'm putting this one on the list too. Do we think that this is enough Christmas romance books? I don't know, we'll have to see. Any one of those will probably check the box for a wintry setting, and I do think several of them are under 300 pages, so I'm not going to make a separate list for those subcategories. I'm just going to assume that I will naturally check those off in the process. But the next category on my list is more lady night books, and I have 4 contenders for this spot. These are all fairly new releases, and I have been so excited to get to these ASAP. The first one is The Princess Knight. The working title for this book before they settled on this title was Medievally Blonde. Like, this is Legally Blonde, but make it medieval with knights. Nothing has ever been more perfectly marketed directly to me, and I have to read this ASAP. The next up is The Everlasting, and this has been getting rave reviews on the internet since it came out. I have not seen a single ill word about this book. It is sweeping, glowing, positively loved, and I think that it's going to hit for me. My understanding is that this follows this badass warrior knight lady and a little shy scholarly guy who maybe flunked out of military knight school. They are in a time loop on a quest to save the world as they know it. I believe that this is based on her previous short story, The Six Deaths of the Saint, which is about the legend of this knight in the first place. So yeah, I'm excited for this one. The biggest gripe that I have with Lady Night books that I've read so far, or even these two, is that I feel like Lady Night books are meant to be sapphic. So I have two on my TBR that will test that theory and see if it's true. The first is Lady's Night, and this is YA, so it checks off the YA box on my bingo card as well. This is giving me big A Knight's Tale energy because I think the central core premise of this is around jousting. A Lady Night jouster sounds like a blast. It kind of reminds me of Gwen and Art Are Not in Love, which I adored that one. The last book in my Lady Night stack is The Isle and the Silver Sea, and of all of these books in this stack, this one I'm expecting the most capital F fantasy from. I think this is going to be the most traditional high fantasy of the batch, and it's been a pretty long time since I've read a good chunky fantasy, which, would you know it, is another square on my bingo card. I believe this takes place in sort of an alternate England on an island where legends and stories are reincarnating themselves indefinitely. In this story, there is a knight and a witch that are ill-fated and star-crossed and doomed to fall in love over and over and over again until an assassin threatens to ruin it all. So together, can they rewrite their story? I have been challenging myself to read more and more nonfiction every year, so I added a nonfiction square to my bingo card, and for that, I want to read Little Weirds by Jenny Slate. I have physically owned this for years. I've been wanting to get to this for so long. For some reason, it just seems like it's meant to be read in the winter. I'm just basing that purely on vibes, not facts. Maybe because I expect it to be funny and colorful, and I'm gonna need that when it's cold. So this is my nonfiction pick, and it's also under 300 pages. I have a category on here called A Book That Makes Me Cry, because sometimes when it's sad and cold outside, a book that is also sad and cold feels correct. So the first one for this is Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I have been wanting to read this for over a year now. I just know that it's going to be beautiful and sad and a little frustrating, and it feels like the right time. The time is upon us. I need to read it. So I'm gonna get to Intermezzo by Sally Rooney because it's the only Sally Rooney book that I haven't read yet. Another one that's been on my TBR for a long time is Beartown by Frederick Bachman. I think that something horrible happens in this book. It is cold and icy and hockey, and that's all I know. I predict that this will be an easy 5 stars and that it will rip my heart out in the process, so I might as well go and accelerate that and put that on my book that will make me cry bucket list section. I have a box on here for Wintry fantasy, and for this one I am selecting The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid. I believe this is Ava Reid's debut novel, and I'm embarrassed I haven't read it as an Ava Reid fangirl. Ava Reid is so good at an evocative atmosphere, and I think this is like pagan, frosty winter forest setting, so I think now is the perfect time to get to this. And that reminds me back to the young adult novel on my bingo card. I also have A Theory in Dreaming, which is the follow-up to A Study in Drowning, which I loved. I thought that was a phenomenal 5-star read, and this is the sequel follow-up that I haven't seen much about, and I'm really excited to get to it. Another young adult novel that I've been very interested in is Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. I believe this is the first in a series or maybe a quartet, and I think it's either nearing completion or all out now, and I think that means that I'm safe to go ahead and get started. I think this is another fractured fairy tale. I have no idea if it is remotely cold in its setting, but again, this is one that I have heard only glowing reviews of, and I've had people personally tell me that I would love this, so I gotta get to it. I don't really know how to classify and where to put these last 3, but they're on my list. I want to read them. We'll figure that part out later. This first one is Son of the Morning by Akweke Emezi. This would probably count as paranormal romance. All I know about this book is what I know from the cover. Let me just show you. Like, are you seeing this? This is pretty crazy. I don't know if this is why choose or poly or what, but I'm intrigued. My interest is piqued. I think there's angel demon going on here, and color me interested. I'm intrigued. Also newly released is I, Medusa by Ayana Gray, who wrote the Beasts of Prey series. Humble brag, kind of subtle flex, but I did get to interview her for a panel last year at a book festival, which was really cool. One of the highlights of my book life. And this is her retelling of Medusa's story, which I'm sad, I'm here, I'm intrigued, I want to open this ASAP. I don't know where this belongs, but I also picked up Hemlock and Silver by T. Kingfisher recently. Maybe it's likely not wintry, but it does feature snow, as in Snow White. Whatever, it's on my list. Along the lines of authors I've been wanting to read more of, I really want to read Heather O'Neill's catalog. So I put a Heather O'Neill book on here, fully intending to read either Lullabies for Little Criminals or her most recent release, which is A Capital of Dreams, I believe. Both of those are high on my list. I'm not really sure which one is going to be the one I reach for. I also have a modern classic on this list. Maybe some highbrow award-winning book would check that box, but I was also kind of noodling with the idea of Secret History by Donna Tartt, because that's a book that is very influential in today's literature world, and I've never read it. It's also the original dark academia book that has defined the book talk and booktube aesthetic for winter and fall. I also have a translated book on this list. I just read a translated book last week. I read Perfume. Really interesting book, and I think that checks that box off. However, I do believe that Beartown is also translated from Swedish. It's also not a TBR if there's not a couple of scary books on there. So there are 2 horror books I have floating around in my head to read this season, one of which is The Impusium. This takes place in the early 1900s at like a health resort or like a tuberculosis colony in, I want to say, Poland, and things go awry. I also read When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy last month, and it is one of the best books I've read all year, maybe ever. One of my favorite horror novels of all time. And I really want to read one of Nat Cassidy's other books. I believe I can choose from Nestlings or Mary. So one of those 2 books I will get to very soon. I don't know if you would call these a winter TBR, because technically it's not winter for another couple of weeks, or if you would call this a Christmas TBR, since I probably won't be able to read all of these in the next couple of weeks. But either way, this is what I hope to read in the near future. This fabricated fantasy lineup will, in fact, limp me through until the end of the year. And if you have any suggestions for ways to curate and bring that magic into 2026, when the winter does get the most bleak, I'm all ears. I hope this inspires you to curate your own holiday fantasies, to spark your joy, to harvest serotonin, and to most importantly, seize whimsy wherever you can. So let me know in the comments what's at the top of your TBR.